Either way, I think that actually makes an awful lot of sense. That's something that a lot of American universities should do a lot more than currently do it, is actually teach civics alongside of everything else. Okay. Today's article comes from the Free Press. Um, and I spotted this one, and it asked a really interesting question, but it was based upon a news thing that happened. So, if unless you're under a rock, you might be aware that the Trump administration made a move to rescind Harvard's ability to enroll foreign students. Okay, fine. I'm not going to comment on that. That's fast moving kind of political news related to that, but it does lead to a relevant question, which is actually the question that prompted this article to be written in the Free Press by oh gosh, I'm not 100% sure I know how to pronounce the first name, so I apologize if I butcher it in advance. Solveig Lucia Gold here. And it's a really interesting piece. I haven't read through it all the way. I skimmed it, but I think it's an excellent piece to just prompt some thoughts. American universities should put America first. Why is 27% of Harvard's student body foreign when there are hundreds of thousands of bright young Americans who could fill those spots instead? Of all the questions raised by the Department of Homeland Security's announcement on Thursday that it would no longer issue visas to foreign students at Harvard, a move that has now been temporarily blocked by a judge, that's the one that is the most existential. It forces us to ask, what and who are American universities for? And that's a fundamental question. It is a very fair question to ask. Forget all the stuff going on with administration versus Harvard or anything like that. It is a very fair question to ask. If you're an American university, who should you be primarily for, doing things for? Should it be for American students and legal residents? And should it be for everybody in the world? That's not to say not to enroll foreign students, and I'm about to get to that. I'm not saying that we should have no foreign students. I am not saying that, so don't go there. As the proud beneficiary of an international education, I earned my graduate degrees in the UK, I have no standing whatsoever to campaign against foreign students, nor do I wish to. Likewise, I'm not saying no foreign students here. The primary purpose of any university should be truth-seeking, and truth-seeking knows no borders. Again, also correct. But I do think these numbers, and Harvard's hardly unique, point to a real problem. Elite American universities are reluctant to be seen as American, or to prioritize American interests, even as they happily accept American taxpayer dollars. I don't know about that. I don't know about that statement necessarily, but let's continue. Rather, they increasingly cast themselves as global universities, educating global citizens. The story of my undergraduate alma mater's unofficial motto, coined by Woodrow Wilson in 1896, is illustrative. Quote, Princeton in the nation's service, end quote, has always been much more than a slogan. The school's Nassau Hall served as the nation's capital for 4 months and 8 days in 1783. 9 Princeton alumni served on the Constitutional Convention in 1787. And there has not been a year without a Princeton alumnus in the U.S. House of Representatives since its first meeting in 1789. Damn. That's pretty damn good, actually. Well done. Bravo to the Princeton folks on that one. I will give you credit there. But not content to serve just our nation in a globalized world, the university revised Wilson's motto in 1996 by adding, and in the service of all nations, end quote. And then in the wake of a controversy surrounding Wilson and inspired by a speech delivered by alumnus Sonia Sotomayor, which Supreme Court Justice, it was changed again in 2016 to read, quote, in the nation's service and the service of humanity, end quote. As one alumnus said at the time in the official university press release, quote, it captures the latest narrative of world affairs. We are not just nations separated by borders. We may even be nationless. Service to humanity is apt, end quote. Nevertheless, Princeton is actually an outlier among elite institutions for even suggesting in its mission statement that the nation, in quotes, should be a priority. Stanford, founded, quote, to promote the public welfare by exercising an influence on behalf of humanity and civilization, end quote, purports to prepare students for, quote, leadership and engaged citizenship in the world, end quote. Yale, which, quote, educates aspiring leaders worldwide, is, quote, committed to improving the world today for future generations. Johns Hopkins puts it succinctly: knowledge for the world. Now, I want to stop here and just make a point in that this is an interesting dynamic to get into. American university, does it serve America? Should it serve the world? What have you? The interesting thing about this, of course, when you're talking about it with respect to science, is that science operates with the norm of communality, which is to say scientific knowledge belongs to everybody and what have you. And so you do welcome anybody from wherever they come from. You know, alongside communality is the other principle of universalism of the Mertonian norms, which is to say it doesn't matter where the hell you come from. If you can do the scientific method, you can be a scientist. Pretty much is what the boiled down version of that Mertonian norm. But how do you square it with universities being in America and what have you? Now let's continue. It's an interesting dynamic. That's why I wanted to bring up this piece. It's a very interesting dynamic. Let's think about it for a second. Should the university is a truth-seeking institution. Truth knows no borders, and the same goes for the scientific research and what have you done there. The knowledge belongs to everybody when you get that, and share that to the next generation of scientists that you're training at a university. Hence the reason to talk about something like this. And when you get to that, though, there's a tension between university is in a particular nation. Should it not be serving also the people in that nation primarily? This rhetoric persists even at small liberal arts colleges. With the exception of Carleton and the 3 military academies, not one of the liberal arts colleges ranked in the top 10 by the U.S. News and World Report, 3 are tied for number 8, mentions the nation. In the words of Amherst, let them give light to the world. End quote. Interesting. Who wouldn't be in favor of serving humanity in the world? But shouldn't the first aim be to fix the dysfunction here at home? Then again, there are some universities that have sown so much of that dysfunction in the first place, from the class war to the global culture war to, for years, they have cultivated an elite that is, on the one hand, unified in its disdain for the working class and all who do not buy the ever-evolving set of luxury beliefs, and on the other, divided by those same beliefs, perpetually sorting itself into so-called affinity groups based on perceived oppressor-oppressed status. That goes to some of the postmodern stuff that is at a lot of universities at this point in here. So that's the dysfunction that we're talking about. Besides, educating global citizens is a whole lot easier than educating American citizens, because what does global citizenship mean? There is no particular knowledge that global citizens must possess, no legal obligations that they must fulfill, no decisions or compromises that they must, as a diverse and opinionated electorate, work through together. Global citizenship sounds important, but generally amounts to kumbaya. American citizenship consists of real choices and sacrifices, alongside its many blessings. As they pursue their global missions, American universities are failing to form an educated American citizenry. We will soon celebrate America's 250th birthday, with great fanfare promised by President Trump, and yet most Americans will not know what they are actually celebrating. Why did the colonists fight the British? What were the original 13 states? When was the Constitution ratified? These are questions that most Americans, 76%, 72%, 87% respectively, cannot answer, even in multiple choice format, according to a 2018 survey that found that only 1 in 3 Americans would be able to pass the U.S. citizenship test. That is such a freaking failure of civics. And it's not just colleges, it's K through 12 schools too. I don't think they're doing a great job on that front. The situation is hardly less dire if we focus strictly on the college educated. A survey conducted last year by College Pulse and my colleagues at the American Council of Trustees and Alumni found that most college students think that the Constitution was written in 1776. Only 32% answer correctly that it was written in 1787, and only 31% that it was written by James Madison. What happened between 1776 and 1787? You had the Articles of Confederation, which was a messed up piece of crap document. Effectively, it didn't work very well, and so they came back and wrote the Constitution. There you go. I do not believe that this is because the surveyed students are stupid. There were 2 civics questions out of 28 they could overwhelmingly answer. 79% knew what the Electoral College is, and 83% could identify that Brown v. Board of Education ended racial segregation in public schools. I think we can fairly speculate that this is, on the one hand, because the Electoral College remains relevant and controversial in American life, and on the other, because one thing students do learn about is America's troubled history with race. Students learn the information that they're exposed to, and most college students are not exposed to information about America's government or history. Out of 1,137 institutions whose curricula ACTA tracks, 931 require a writing course, and 938 require a science course, but only 210 require a course on U.S. history or government. That should be all of them. So here is a relatively straightforward but important change that universities across the country can and should make to put America first. Require civics. For inspiration, they might look to Ohio, where next month the recently signed Senate Bill 1, the Advanced Ohio Higher Education Act, will take effect, mandating, among other things, that every state institution of higher education require its bachelor students to pass a course in, quote, the subject area of American civic literacy, end quote. At a minimum, no student will graduate without demonstrating proficiency in the Constitution, the Declaration of Independence, the Federalist Papers, the Emancipation Proclamation, the Gettysburg Address, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s letter from Birmingham jail, and, for the sake of understanding the free market, selections from the writings of Adam Smith. It should not be controversial to say that every American, let alone every college-educated American, needs to read and discuss these texts. Our continued self-governance requires this basic knowledge. And it should not be controversial to say that every foreigner who studies in America needs to read them too. For one thing, it would be a whole lot easier to justify the 27% if Harvard could legitimately claim to instill in its foreign students a respect for American laws and traditions. For another, this would in fact be a service to humanity, because it's precisely through enduring ideas like the ones contained in our foundational texts that America is best positioned to, quote, give light to the world. Bravo. Bravo, bravo, bravo is what I say in this. And that's the point. It's not to say that you shouldn't have foreign students. You absolutely should. Absolutely have foreign students. Foreign students are awesome. If they're brilliant students, we should have them here. We should be educating them. We should be providing them that scientific basis if they're going on into sciences. Absolutely do it. But also teach American civics. It's actually pretty shocking to me that so few schools actually teach anything about American civics and require that. So I think that's actually a pretty dang brilliant idea. And I'm not against that idea in other countries either. You should learn some of the foundations of the UK if you're going into a UK university. You should learn UK civics. You should learn Spanish civics. You should learn civics of any particular country where that university is. I think that actually makes a lot of sense to do that. So you can understand the country that you're in there, particularly if you are a foreign student in that country. So I think that's actually pretty dang good here. But this larger question, this nice little bit of tension between scientific knowledge does belong to everybody, regardless of where you're doing that research and what have you. That is the principle of communality and universalism, obviously, normative principle of universalism. Anybody can be a scientist so long as, following scientific method and what have you. That is, again, very simplified version of that Martonian norm. But you can, you have that little bit of tension, but I think that can just be mitigated I think that an American university, I think I agree with this author, that an American university should also teach American civics, and it should be included there as a requirement for graduation. Not a fan, of course, obviously, of it being forced upon by any entity, external or internal. But if it's a requirement, then let them determine how to teach it. But either way, I think that actually makes an awful lot of sense. That's something that a lot of American universities should do a lot more than currently do it, is actually teach civics alongside of everything else. If only because a lot of these things are connected to the whole ability to pursue science does depend so much on some of those ideals of academic freedom and free speech that are pretty emblematic in the foundational texts of the U.S. Anyway, let me know what you think. Not emblematic, but captured in the foundational text of the United States. Anyway, let me know what you think. Hit the like button on the way out the door, comment on the video, share the video, subscribe to the channel, all that lovely good jazz. Till next time, I'm Adrian. Stay curious.